Hello, welcome back to another episode of Rebel Driver's Garage. We are continuing our assembly of the Ford 428. At this point we have our rods, our pistons on the rods, the piston rings file fitted and installed on the pistons, and now they're all ready to go into the block. So what we need a few things. We have to have rod bearings, which we have rod bearings right here. This is one package of them. Plastic gauge, which is that. We got some plastic gauge here to measure our bearing clearances. We're going to double check those. We have our basic piston ring compressor so we can get the pistons into the block. We got assembly lube for after we do our final torquing and the bearing clearances. Okay, and we also have some beer to drink while we're doing this. Though the beer is really cold. The beer is really cold because it's really cold outside. It is currently 6 degrees outside with something like around -3 wind chill. It's snowing a little bit. I have the heater up full blast so you can hear the fan running. So it is currently in the mid-40s in the garage. I wish the block was warmer than it is, but it's going to be okay. Anyhow, I got it turned up. Well, hopefully it'll warm up a little bit as we go. All right. I don't have any. Okay, first things first. We got to get the piston into the block. We have to take the main rod, small cap, the cap off the rod, which they are currently torqued on by our machine shop. So I'm going to take my impact here. Oops, don't lose those. Like that. Get the cap off, which we're going to probably have to do a little bit of tapping. Goodness sakes, these are on pretty tight. Anyway. Give me a moment while I get these apart. Okay, we got the rod cap off the rod. The ARP rod bolts are knurled, so they kind of hang on to the rod cap a little. Pretty good. Okay, so the next thing we need to do is, whoops. Ooh, that's not good. Oh, that broke. Good thing I have another one. Hang on a second. But before we do any of that, I am going to clean the bearing surfaces a little bit. Make sure that they're all nice and clean first. See, there's a little bit of dirt on them still. But nothing major. Maybe a little bit of dirt on them still. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to take the rod bearing. It's got a little tang on it here, as you can see the tang right there, and it goes into the little slot right there on the rod cap, and these just press in. There we go. And then I'm going to clean the bearing too. So I just got my dirty fingers on them. That's right. That's good. Okay. Now we put a bearing in the rod. Goodness sakes. They are being stubborn today. There we go. Clean this rod too. Just kind of clean the dirt off of it. And these are Galaxie P-series bearings. Oh, Lordy. Alright, you. There we go. Alright. So this is the number 1 rod, so I'm going to put this one in first. So we get the ring compressor expanded big enough so it'll go around over the piston rings. So there we go. The other thing I'm going to do is clean the block bore that I'm putting it into. This is the number 1 block bore here. See, that's kind of dirty. Though it is kind of, I had WD-40 in all the bores for a while, keep them from flash rusting. So, clean everything up. Like so. And then I'm going to get a little bit of, I'm going to clean this ring compressor too because it's filthy. Don't want it transferring dirt into the piston bores. See, that's pretty dirty. It's been on the shelf for a long time. Okay. The other thing I have here is this is a Blueprint engine oil. I'm going to take a paper towel, like so. Put a little bit of oil on the paper towel, and then I'm going to spread it around in the piston bores that I'm working in. The number 1, number 5. Okay. So, maybe a little bit more. I find it funny that Blueprint Engine's oil is actually blue. At least this stuff was when I bought this stuff from them. They're local to us here in Kearney, Nebraska. So, they do a lot of great motors there. Okay, so we stick the piston inside like this. Take the key, this is a key that comes with these, and we're going to start tightening up let's go. These can be a bit of a fight. So they do have size specific what do you call it, ring compressors for each size of a bore. Now if you're doing a lot of engines and they put the same bore, they're worth getting, but I don't know how many 428s I'm going to be doing that are 30 over, so we'll just go the old-fashioned way with this little guy here. I like to have the piston skirts hanging out of the bottom of it, like so. All right, and you really got to get these tight. So. These square keys are hard in your hands. Alright. Okay, so the first thing we got to do is set the piston down in the bore. Now, a lot of people will have like little rubber hoses or like, you know, like fuel hoses over the rod bolts, or there's actually booties you can buy. But the thing is if you're really careful, you really don't need to do that. You also need to have the piston right side up, right? If you got the piston already oriented right, you can always double check at this point, like to make sure that your rod tang is going to be on the outside of the block. This is the outside of the block here. All right. Now what I do is I get my hand up in here. I'm not sure this is tight enough. Give this a little bit of tap so all the layers inside here are nice and level. And then we start. I hold on to the rod bolts and I start trying to make sure it does not damage the crankshaft as I go down. The reason why you want to do that is sure your piston is oriented correctly. There you go. So you don't want the rod bolts to scratch up the rod bearing journals on the block. So let's see if the rings will get past this, or I don't have this tight enough. You'll know really quickly. The second the rings come out the bottom of the ring compressor here, if it doesn't go all the way into the block, you'll know right away. If the thing falls off onto the ground like that, then you know you did it right. Now all you have to do is concentrate to make sure your rod goes around the outside of the crank journal, nice and slow. She's done. Alright. She's on, that's number 1. Now let me flip her around and we'll do number 5. She's all the way tapped down in there. Okay, gonna do the other side. Okay, now I got the piston in. Alright. I lubed the rod side of the bearing here liberally with the lubricate plate. Now, because we're sitting in the second rod, we also got to be careful not to hit the first rod when we get down at the bottom there. So we got this set on there. A few little love taps around the edge to make sure it's seated. Okay. And we start tapping it. As soon as I get my hands on the rod bolts up there. Where are they? There they are. Now what my left hand is doing down there is guiding the rod bolts around the journal of the crank. So they don't hit the crank and scratch it. Because scratching the rod journal on your crank is bad. Alright, she's all the way down in there. So, we're going to flip the motor over so we can check clearances now. So I just rotate it over. Like so. And you can see how the rods are on there. Now we get out the plastic gauge and we're going to check bearing clearances. Bear with me a moment. All right, so we have the plastic gauge on the crank journals, and we're going to take the rod cap with a dry bearing. We don't want to put any lubricant on it. And this one's marked number 5, so we got to get it on the number 5 rod, which is this one here, because the engine's upside down. You got to think a little backwards, like so. Take dead blow of our hammer here. Oops. There we go. Rod bolts. Again, these are ARP bolts that we added for a little bit extra strength over stock rod bolts. Remember, the number that's on the rod cap goes towards the outside of it. It matches the number that's on the rod itself. And the little tang thing goes towards the outside, so it's on the pan rail side. Okay. These fit really snug. They just don't slide on. Here we go. Give a little bit of a lug tap to that. There we go. So get the nuts started. I'm going to take the impact here and just kind of snug things up. All we're doing is snugging them up so the rod cap matches that. We're not going to try to torque with this. That's impossible. I've heard tell guys, oh, I can torque anything with my impact. I can get it accurate at any time. Okay. All right, that gets them snug. So the rods are torqued at 45. I know because I looked it up. So we gotta set our torque wrench here to 45. Oops. Lock it. Okay. There's already oil on the rod bolts here because you want to have a little bit of oil on them. Now I'm just kind of bringing it up. Okay. All right, go around and do the other side. What you can't see is my foot in the leg of the engine stand, kind of holding it to keep it from rolling around. See? Keeping that from happening. Okay. So now we have it rod. It's torqued. We got to untorque them. So now we got to take it all apart again. In case you're wondering what that number is, that's from the balancing, when they balance the engine. It's a gram number in grams that they weighed it. So you have the rod bearings. One thing you got to be careful of is the rod bearings like to fall out. Okay. Keep kicking the camera there. So it's on the bottom end of the scale for 1/1000th of an inch. You want like 1 to 1.5. You're going to go all the way up to 3/1000 if you want. Excuse me. So I'm going to put it back together. It's not overly tight, which is not what I don't want. Oops. And looks like the bearing moved a little bit, so I'm going to have to tap that back into place. So I'm going to clean this up and move on and retorque these and put lube on the bearing surfaces and retorque it and be done with it, and it's done. Then I got to do the other 6 rods. Okay, I'm going to torque them for the last time. I'm going to do 2 steps just to get the rod seated for the first step and then the final step. So we're going to do 30 psi. I'm going to try to get them seated, that's all. So, and then I'm going to go up to 45. Don't jerk on your torque wrench, otherwise you get a false reading. Okay. You go like, jerk it on like this is not going to get you the reading you want, so. Alright. Alright. Nice and easy. Rotates nice and easy. I'm going to get the next journal down at the bottom and flip it back over. And then I'm going to start on my number 2 and number 6 cylinders. and just keep right on going. Okay, after you got all your rods and pistons in, I rotate the engine around and I go back over and I check all the torques one more time, just to be sure that everything is copacetic. You also want to make sure that the engine rotates easy. There we go. So it shouldn't take a lot of torque to move the engine around, like 30 foot-pounds, unless you got some kind of crazy high-tension piston rings or something in it, then something's wrong. If it doesn't want to turn at all, then something's really, really wrong, and you need to stop and give your machinist a call and try to figure it out. All right. So we got them all in. They're all torqued to 45 foot-pounds. And I'm just gonna rotate this around one more time. It rotates nice. There we go. Flip the engine back over. Oh yeah. Alrighty. She's up on top dead center. Number one cylinder's up top. One more job of the build is done. Now we can start putting in the camshaft, timing, lifters. Actually, we'll probably leave the lifters out because we're going to flip it over after that, put the oil pump and oil pan on. And can't put the lifters in before that's done, because if you flip the engine over without the push rods in and rocker arms and all that, the lifters will just fall right out. So next step, timing set and lifters. Camshaft. Timing set and camshaft. Yes, or camshaft then timing set. Oh well. Thanks for continuing to follow along on this. If you'd like to follow along, we have several previous parts of this videos built on this engine. If you like these, like, comment. If you have any questions, please comment. I'll answer all the questions. The build's going pretty well so far. I had a little bit of fight on a couple of these, double checking the bearing clearances. These ARP bolts going through the rod caps were kind of tough. The threads were catching a little bit, but that's just the way it is. Nice having good, strong rod bolts in this now instead of the stockers. Now we're going to keep moving on, follow along on this. We have more coming. I got more coming on the 65 impale. That's behind you, and I think that'll be the next video after this. Is we got a bunch of stuff we've been doing on that. I'm going to try to get to a video up on that. Okay. Thanks for watching. Have a good evening.